Thank you everybody for coming through to our Kobus session, Community of Learning Principles. Today we are going to be graced by a wonderful, bountiful presence and knowledge. And I hope that at the end of the session that you leave here much more empowered, much more confident in your roles as leaders and education stakeholders, and we'll have a short Q&A at the end because we would like to hear from you, our audience, what it is that you would like to hear on this platform. And we're going to begin with a quick intro by Professor Kobus Visser. He is the Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences here at UWC. So, very humbled and honored to welcome Professor Visser to our Kobus session. He has an esteemed academic background and a lifelong career in education. So, he further holds, in terms of academic qualifications, I'm not going to go too much into it, but I think noteworthy to mention a little bit for each of our speakers as well. They've worked hard for it. Professor Visser holds a honors degree in organizational development, a master's degree in management, as well as achieving a doctor of philosophy in leadership from the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Visser is also the recipient of various global academic awards, fellowships, and prizes. A true ambassador for education. He is the co-editor of South African Entrepreneurship Education and Training, as well as various other academic publications on management and entrepreneurship. So Professor Visser is truly passionate about entrepreneurship education, as well as the field of systemic entrepreneurship and transformational leadership. Today, Professor Visser will open the session for us and share a little bit more about his experience on campus and in terms of his leadership role when it comes to the importance of energy, vitality, and connectedness. So without further ado, a warm round of applause.
But first of all, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure and honor for me to be involved in this project. I can reflect that I've been instrumental in the relationship between KOLP and UWC, and I'd like to report that ever since it's been going, we've incorporated this as a flagship community project in our faculty. Each faculty has a number of community-related projects, and KOLP and what we do here and what you do and this team does is for us our method of linking to the communities. And communities, of course, we can see in a very broad context, or it can be very specific. So depending on which hat one wears, one can look at community in a very broad context, and that's what we do here. So with that as just the start, and I shan't keep you long, I'm always surprised and amazed when one walks into a room like this and you see the seats are being filled up from the back. And I happened to go to Artscape the other night to go and see the Barletons. And I was amazed how we were all fighting for a front seat. And I realized, and I asked myself, well, what is the differential here? What is the distinguishing differential? And I realized that it is price. So I think what we ought to do is let them pay to be here, and then they'll fill it up from the front. Human nature, and fascinating at that, as is even being exhibited by, and I have picked up, it's mostly principals here. We may have one or two from reps from governing bodies, and might be even teachers here. So all of you are very welcome. Lorna, right at the back, that's our stalwart of the link between KOLP and my office, thank you very much for all your hard work. Lorna, I want you to stand. I want people to have a look at you. Lorna has been, and I've dedicated my life to education. Most of my work has been in education. And Lorna started, Lorna, I'm lying maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago in our office, and Lorna registered for evening lectures and she slogged away. And I remember my very first discussion I had with Lorna, and I said, Lorna, don't try and do everything at one single moment in time. And she said, Prof, muni worry, take it step by step. And I kept at Lorna's case, and I'm not the one who forced her into that, but Lorna knew what she wanted, and Lorna did a full day's job, and Lorna went to evening classes twice a week, got home late, ran a family or a household, and Lorna graduated last week. I was very elated to read out her name, because deans have the privilege of reading out the names. I gave Lorna a hug on the stand up there. Lorna's already registered. She's doing postgraduate studies now, so she doesn't give up. She just keeps on going. Right, so I have deviated slightly. The other things that I've mentioned about COP as our flagship community project, and we are absolutely delighted and elated with this, and we will keep on with this as long as you want to keep on with us. I think the investment in leadership and the investment specifically in school leadership is one of the most critical components that we need and that we require. Investment is not always in monetary terms. Investment is in what do we do and how can we assist for leaders in the most important profession in our country, to assist them to do their job better so that they can motivate their staff so that we can make better leaders of our youth for tomorrow. We are, most of us, if I look around, there are a few young pretty faces here, but I can see that some of you are verging towards my age, and we have a certain sell-by date. Mine is approaching relatively quickly, and we will step out of that. And we have to ensure that that vacuum that we leave is that we transfer our knowledge and our skills to a group of young South Africans to take over and fill those posts. And that's why I have a very, in Afrikaans, we would say a baie teer plekkie, a very special place in my heart for teachers, maybe because I started as a high school teacher at Paul Roos Gymnasium centuries ago. And then moved on to higher education, where I still am a teacher, although it might be very much in the style of a school or a headmaster who's more administratively employed than on the teaching perspective. Ladies and gents, two things that I'd like to mention. If I look at the order of events today, I'm absolutely fascinated by the items which are going to be spoken about here. And the first one I see is that after Samantha done her welcome is by Michelle Hines to speak about energy and vitality. Now I have no clue what Michelle is going to talk about. But in a world as what we have today, which is, it's fast-paced. We hardly have caught up with something, then the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 events are there. And it is so important that we look at our own well-being. And I know as teachers and as senior educators and headmasters and headmistresses here, is that many of you have the notion that you would care for others before caring for yourself. And it is a very noble characteristic to have, but it's also a very dangerous characteristic to have. And I always, when I find some of my friends, and I've been through this in my life, so as an old toppie I can share some institutional knowledge with you. And once when I sat in an aeroplane just before it took off, then I go through the standard procedure of safety checks. And the person who speaks on that intercom has this specific set of ideas that she has to explain to us. And one of them says the following, that in the unlikely event of cabin depressurization, and how does it go further? Oxygen masks will descend from the console above you. And what is the other critical statement after that? Sorry? Thank you. First, help yourself to the oxygen mask before you help the kid or the person next to you. And that took a long time for me to get to grips with. But what is the story there? The story is that if you are not well, how can you make other people well? So I took that very much to heart, and in a sense I became very selfish in my life. Is that I didn't want to make other people's problems my problems unless I could sort out my own. Once I've sorted out my own, I could attend to other people. And this is something which I've been doing as a dean, where I run a show of 5,600 students, which implies that 25% of all students coming onto this campus going to the door on the opposite side of this building. I run 5,600 students and about 230 staff. And I've got to listen, like you all have to listen, to each and everyone's wailing and moaning and groaning, and one's got to be able to separate these issues. So this element here of energy and vitality. So if we keep on assisting and saving others without saving ourselves, our energy is going to drain. And therefore I look very much forward to listening to what the speaker has to say about what do we do to preserve energy, to regain our energy, and to have vitality. I come from a family, I married into a family in which the most famous heart surgeon of all time is a member of. And he once said to me, he said, Kobus, you must always, doesn't matter what you do, you must always have a reason to get up for in the morning. So if we, no matter what happens at our schools, as tough as it may seem, if we don't have a reason to get up for in the morning, we might just as well stop breathing. And I suspect, and I hope I'm not preempting Michelle on her presentation, but it all has to do with that energy and that vitality. So that's the one comment I'd like to make. The other comment is on the second speaker here, Melanie Burke's talk on creating connectedness. In a sense for me, one of the lessons I've learned in life is that, and I know that you've read out all these things about honors and masters and PhD and all the other things, and that's fine. But it is quite often, it's not what you know, it is who you know. And for me, this is one of the key strengths of KOLP. KOLP allows us here to come and meet with people. And this is what this creating connectedness is. And if I look at a definition of creating connectedness, it says to me it's to explore the unique. What is there that is unique? What is there that I can use to become more connected, that I can expose my school to more ideas, more examples, better things in my kids or the people in my school. It's to explore uniqueness and the special and that which is special, to bring forth what does not yet exist. And this is where we are. This is how the human being has been able to conquer the world. If you look at us in terms of stature, we're very small. 1.5, 1.7, 1.9, maybe 2 meters, and then you get those big oaks that play rugby. They are somewhat 2 meters and above. But comparatively speaking, we're very small to what goes on in the world. If we look at nature out there, compare us to the size of elephants and whales and sharks. But we have the ability to control. Why? Because we have a mind that we can use. We can think. And unfortunately, in the animal kingdom, they haven't that set of development, and hence our ability to control where we are. Whether it's always been good, that's another point that we can debate about. But certainly, creating connectedness is our ability to be innovative and the ability to exist, and in everything that we do for that to be innovative and to create something new. Now, how do we do that? And the important thing here is that we do that with connectedness, getting to know each other, sharing ideas, sharing challenges. I dread the word problems because that's got a very negative connotation. So you'll find that in PC speak is that we don't use the word problem anymore, otherwise we'll never get forward. We start talking about challenges. And we build coalitions, as I have seen happening here, because I've been an observer of all of this for a very long time, and to build social partnerships and collaboration. So though for me, I would, if I'd been invited to attend the whole session, and I'd love to sit here, is that these are the kinds of things, if I look just at face value of what is happening. And so one doesn't always have to be here to say, I'm now specifically going to apply this to my school, and this will be of benefit to colleague A, B, and C. It is what is in it for me as a schoolmaster. Let that oxygen mask drop, and instead of assisting the people there, and if I struggle to put on their masks, I'm going to pass out, they're going to pass out, we're all going to be Bokveld. So let us rather see if we can turn that around. I want to conclude with one example of my own life. And it was here when we look at connectedness and energy and vitality. And I remember when I decided to do my doctorate. And I had never been, and I've been around a few times around the block. I've never felt the loneliness in my life as doing a doctorate, or some of you do your master's or your honors degree. And you could be around with people. People could be around you. They could bring you food and coffee and all of that. But when you struggle with that problem, how do you deal with that? Well, yeah, there I use the word. I struggle with that challenge. Who do I talk to? And at that stage of your, nobody can, because you're alone in that. And I trust that the things that COP are trying to do here for us as teachers and headmasters is exactly to address that. So I am absolutely elated, and thank you very much for inviting me to this. As long as I'm here, I'd like to come and show my face. All the very best. This is a good thing that you're doing, and it is time well spent. Thank you so much.